Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. This is Prabjot Kaur and this is video series on data structures. Data structure is a subject which is being taught in BTech as well as MCA courses. This part is also available in GATE syllabus. This video series is going to start from scratch and we will be digging deep into the advanced topics of data structure. This video series is going to cover these topics. We will be starting from scratch we will be understanding some basic terminology which will help us to understand the complex algorithms as well as the complex topics of this subject. This syllabus is particularly taken from MCA course, but this is applicable to other courses as well. Like if you are studying data structure in your BTech or MCA or BCA or whatever course you are opting for, this syllabus is going to be common. These are the few suggested books that you can follow along to understand this subject better. Now, why we study data structures at first place? The first and the obvious answer to this question is because this is a part of our curriculum. The second answer can be the computer scientists study data structure because they want to develop complex algorithms. So they need to understand how the data is being stored inside computer systems. Now, what is actually a data structure? So this is what our whole subject is. We are going to research about starting from the basic terms. So for this introductory video, let's understand what is data structure. We will divide this term into two categories, data and structure. Later in this presentation, we are going to understand what is data. So let's now understand structure here. Structure is something which is related to organization. So for example, you might be sitting on your chair or a couch or a bed. Everything in your room is well organized because this is the only way you can assess the things. Similarly, we want data to be structured inside computer systems so that we can retrieve it later. So there comes the need of data structure. So if you understand how and why data is structured inside the computer system, this will be easier for you to develop good programs, to understand algorithms, and even to solve the problems by algorithms. So let's begin. First thing is computer. I think everybody knows what is computer. So computer is electronic device. By electronic, I mean it is having electrical power on which it works, because every machine or anything on this earth needs some sort of fuel to work on. So for computers, it requires electrical power as a fuel to work on. Second thing is the circuits. So computer system has embedded logic circuits which gives it a decision making power. And moreover, it also helps computers to do complex calculations. So this is the computer. So how does computer works? Computer works on IPO cycle, where I means we as a user provide some sort of input to the computer system. It then processes it and then it gives out the required output back to the user. So it basically works on IPO cycle. Because when it provides you the output, it then asks you if you want to do more calculations. If you say yes, this cycle is going to restart again. So we understood what is computer. So computer is an electronic machine which works on IPO cycle, in which it takes input through input devices from user, processes it as instructed by the user, and gives back the desired output to the user. So data is something which we should know. We understand what actually the data is, but how do we define it? How do we explain this to someone who doesn't know about the data? So data is something which denotes some sort of facts, figures, or some numbers. These facts, numbers and figures does not convey any sort of meaning. So data is actually a raw material that we provide to the computer system. So we understood in computer that computer takes input from the user. So that input is data, which is a raw material for computer to work on. We understood the data as raw facts and figures, which does not convey any sense to the user. Let's understand data more clearly with example. Let me write here 1, David, let it be +2, etc. These values or figures does not convey any sort of sense to you. These are just the random values. So this is the data. Now we will understand what is memory. Computer memory is very much similar to the human memory. We want to store the data so that we can process it and we can retrieve it later. So for that we need some sort of space, which is known as memory in computers as well as in our humans. So the purpose of memory is to retrieve the data later stage, and secondly to process it. We can understand the concept of memory more clearly with the example of cooking. Just like in cooking, we need some sort of ingredients and we need some sort of utensil or container in which we need to put those ingredients to process them. Similarly, we have the data, which is a very much important thing in computers, and we need to process it, and for that we need to put that data into some sort of container so that we can process it according to the instructions provided by the user. So that sort of space is memory. What are the different types of memories? You might already know about this because these are the basic terms. So first type of the memory is primary memory, and second is secondary memory. Primary memory is also known as temporary memory, and it has also another names like volatile and short-term memory. Similar to that, secondary memory also have different names, just like permanent memory, non-volatile memory, and long-term memory. We will not discuss in deep about memory because this is not the part of this series. But for data structures, we will be working only on primary memory. So what different type of data structures that we will study later in this series, like linked lists, trees, graphs and all those structures work in primary memory. So this is why we need to understand the basic terms. So this was about the memory, some sort of space which is required to store the data and also to process it. Next thing is information. Simply put, information is processed data. Processed data means which will convey some meaning or sense to the user. We can again understand the information with example. David with roll number 1 stood first in the class. So this is information. You may remember when we were discussing about data, we have written the random values like David 1 + 2. these values were raw material and they were not giving any sort of information or sort of sense to us, but this particular sentence is giving something to you, and that something is some sort of meaning or sense. You are understanding something, so this is information. For everyone, we need to understand this thing, that the difference between data and information. So the actual purpose of the computers is to convert data into information. So everything which comes in between is the responsibility of the processor. So actually what computer does is it takes the data as a raw material and it converts it into information. For understanding data structure better, we need to know these terms. Let me give you a brief idea about these terms and then I will explain to you with example. Field or attribute is something which shows some sort of property about something which we are storing. An entity is something that has certain attributes or properties which may be assigned some specific set of values. An entity set is collection of different entities. Field or attribute is an elementary unit of an information which represents an property of entity. When we store entity inside computer system, each entity is known as record. And when different records has been kept, this forms a file. For more clarity, let's take an example where we will be storing the student data. Let's draw a table here to store that data. Let's say we want to save serial number, roll number, name, address, and let's add one more column here for marks. These values, serial number, roll number, name, address and marks, these are the properties of each student, and these properties known as field or attribute because these define some characteristics of student. Now each student will be having a different values. Let's take this is 1, roll number let's say 1001, and name let's take David, address let's take US, and let's take marks 92. This particular list of all the fields, collection of all the fields, is known as record because this define a one entity student. In this table we have student as an entity which have different properties known as field or attributes, and collection of field values for particular student is known as record. Now for every student there will be a unique record. So each student represents an entity. In this table there will be more students. Collection of all the records of each student will form a file that we will store inside computer system. If you found some value in this video, please like this video and subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss anything. Thank you.